The creation of the atomic bomb not only had many immediate consequences, but also led to the start of the Cold War and current nuclear conflicts. However, the making of the atomic bomb was not a quick process. 40 years earlier, Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, sets into motion a wheel of scientific progress and discovery that eventually leads to the beginning of the Manhattan Project. In 1938, two scientists in Germany, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, performed an experiment that involved bombarding the element uranium with neutrons, producing energy and much lighter elements. Some scientists in the US became concerned that Nazi Germany would be able to develop their own nuclear weapons. They tried to convince the US government to create their own nuclear research program, but with no luck. In October of 1939, a scientist named Leo Szilard employed the help of his friend, Albert Einstein, to write a letter to President Roosevelt to convince the US to begin their own nuclear research program. The letter talked about the threat Germany posed, saying,
"Extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed."
Einstein's influence helped their cause, and that month, Roosevelt appointed the Advisory Committee on Uranium. However, they did not make much progress, and in June of 1942, the creation of the Manhattan Engineer District was authorized, later known as the Manhattan Project. There were two primary leaders in the Manhattan Project. Leslie Groves headed the military side, and Robert Oppenheimer directed the scientific side. Immediately after their selection, the two leaders decided to move all of the scientists to a primary location. They wanted to build a laboratory in an isolated area where the scientists could work freely together in a secure environment. The location they eventually chose was situated in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Both bombs worked differently. The uranium bomb used a modified artillery gun method and shot one mass of uranium at a uranium target at 2,000 feet per second. This caused supercritical mass to be reached, fission to begin, and caused the bomb's detonation. This would not work for the plutonium bomb because the two masses would not come together quickly enough to initiate fission. The implosion method was chosen to detonate the plutonium bomb. A mass of plutonium was situated in the center of the bomb, surrounded by a layer of explosives, and once these detonated, the plutonium compressed instantly, causing supercritical mass to be reached, leading to fission and the bomb's detonation. July 16, 1945, the day of the first atomic bomb explosion in history. The site the bomb was tested at was a place called Trinity, and was located in Alamogordo, New Mexico. This test was designed to ensure that the implosion method would work. Nicknamed the Gadget, the test bomb's explosion was equivalent to around 20 kilotons of TNT.
You could see at first, this fireball and then the ionization in the air, the color around it. And this thing slowly, majestically rising.
Some of the scientists who witnessed the test petitioned the government, asking that the bomb not be used against Japan, the only country left fighting against the Allies. Despite the conflicts, President Truman authorized the dropping of the bomb on July 25, 1945, although it would only be used if Japan refused to accept the Potsdam Declaration, which called for their immediate surrender. They rejected the declaration, and planning began for the dropping of the bomb. Several targets were considered for the first bomb. Ultimately, Hiroshima was chosen. Not only did it have a large industrial area, but also the topography would focus the blast of the bomb on the city. On August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay, commanded by Paul W. Tibbets, took off from the airbase at Tinian with two escort planes. At 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima was spotted, the bomb bay doors of the Enola Gay opened, and the uranium bomb, Little Boy, tumbled down upon the city. There was a short delay, and then a flash of blinding light filled the plane, and a shockwave rattled the B-29. Tibbets later wrote,
"The city we had seen so clearly a few minutes before was now an ugly smudge. It had completely disappeared under this awful blanket of smoke and fire."
The dice had been cast, lives had been lost, and the nuclear age had begun. The bomb destroyed 90% of the city immediately, and 80,000 people had been instantly vaporized, some leaving only their shadow behind.
The world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. We won the race of discovery against the Germans. We have used it in order to shorten the agony of war.
The Japanese government had no idea what had been used against Hiroshima. Since no surrender was agreed upon, planning began for bombing a second city. Charles Sweeney led this mission, and the plane containing the bomb was called Boxcar. Kyoto was the initial target, but bad weather the day of the bombing, August 9th, switched the target to Nagasaki. At 11:02 a.m., the plutonium bomb, Fat Man, exploded in midair, killing about 40,000 people instantly, and the death toll continued to rise. About 20 people died every day for weeks after the bombing. Despite the horrific reports coming from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japanese leaders could not bring themselves to surrender. They summoned Emperor Hirohito, who said,
"The time has come where we must bear the unbearable."
On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. The two bombs combined had killed about 150,000 people outright and injured an additional 125,000 people. Within 5 years, 270,000 people had died as a direct result of the bombings. There is still debate today over the military and moral justifications of the bombings, but no matter what viewpoint you share, it is always agreed upon that the use of the bombs unleashed many consequences that still haunt the world today. One of the largest and longest-lasting consequences was the Cold War. The Cold War began in 1945 and lasted until 1991, following the USSR's development of nuclear weapons. It began when Soviet spies infiltrated the Manhattan Project, discovering valuable information that sped up the creation of their own bomb by years. When the Soviets tested their first atomic bomb in August of 1949, the nuclear arms race had just begun. Both countries soon had enough nuclear weapons to blow up the world several times over. The consequences of nuclear war with the USSR would be fatal, and people soon began to realize this. Even though both nations were afraid of nuclear attack, neither country ever in any way confronted the other. The theory of why this is called MAD, which stands for Mutually Assured Destruction. Basically, both countries knew that if they attacked the other, it would result in their own country being destroyed. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, a lot of these tensions were eased, but today there are still conflicts between many nations who developed or are working on developing nuclear weapons. Although in the past we as a global community have not been very responsible with our use of nuclear weapons and technology, since 1968 we have been working towards changing our ways. That year, the 5 nuclear weapon states, the US, the former USSR, France, the United Kingdom, and China, all signed the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, promising to not spread nuclear technology, work towards disarmament, and use nuclear technology peacefully. Many countries later joined the treaty as well. However, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea have either withdrawn from the treaty or refused to sign it since its beginning. Iran is part of the treaty, but has repeatedly been violating it. They've been enriching uranium for what we now know are not peaceful purposes, and according to one Israeli official,
"If Iran gets nuclear weapons, the Middle East will look like hell. I cannot imagine that we can live with a nuclear Iran."
Recent news about Iran's nuclear capabilities is shocking and frightening.
The first convoy of the 20% fuel was produced and provided for the scientists.
For the crowd, it was thrilling news. For the U.S. and the West, it's bound to be deeply worrying.
Unfortunately, Iran is not the only problem. One of the U.S.'s biggest concerns is that terrorists will get a hold of nuclear weapons, and the theory of MAD does not apply to them. They would bomb the U.S. even though it would result in many more conflicts. To avoid this, the first step is disarmament, which poses another conflict. Iran and Syria do not support the idea. President Obama is pushing the issue, saying,
"The United States will take concrete steps towards a world without nuclear weapons. To put an end to Cold War thinking, we will reduce the role of nuclear weapons in our national security strategy and urge others to do the same."
However, many share the view of The Economist.
There will be a lot of disarmament talk in 2010, but not a whole lot will get done.
There are many conflicts going on, and there are many more that will occur. The atomic bomb has not only led to dangerous conflicts, it has also taught the world that with every decision, there's an ethical question that can be raised. As technology hurtles forward at an astounding pace, we must ask ourselves, just because we can, should we? The atomic bomb has impacted the science and global community and has changed our perspective of nuclear weapons forever. Current conflicts and the Cold War have without a doubt occurred because of the innovation of the atomic bomb, truly man's most awful weapon.